Now we take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. First off, Nigeria's ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, has almost effectively secured the parliamentary numbers required to alter the country's constitution without relying heavily on opposition support. This is consolidating an overwhelming majority in the National Assembly. With 84 senators and 231 seats in the House of Representatives, the party has already crossed the critical two-thirds threshold needed to push through constitutional amendments in the Senate, placing extraordinary legislative power in the hands of the governing party, which now has 31 governors nationwide. The development marks one of the most dramatic shifts in Nigeria's parliamentary balance in recent years, effectively giving the APC the numerical strength to determine the direction of constitutional reforms within the legislature. The consolidation of power became even more pronounced in the Senate after 3 additional lawmakers defected from the People's Democratic Party, further shrinking the opposition's caucus to just 14 senators. The latest defections underscore the deepening crisis within the PDP and indeed the opposition parties and highlight the accelerating erosion of their influence in the upper chamber. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu says he had no reservations signing Nigeria's Electoral Act of 2026, describing the decision as part of his commitment to democracy and the rule of law. The president made the remarks during an interfaith breaking of fast with members of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, the umbrella body for political parties at the State House in Abuja. Tinubu said the legislation was passed by an overwhelming majority in the National Assembly, adding that he did not want to throw the country into turmoil or prolonged argument over the law. Describing himself as a die-hard Democrat, the president says Nigeria's democracy must continue to be guided by the rule of law, insisting that political parties and alliances remain voluntary in a democracy, stressing that no Democrat should face persecution for their political choices.
I'm a registered voter. I'm on the same platform with you or not. I'm going to stick to my platform. When it was against me, years past, I told the line. I was in opposition without a threat to any human being except military junta. And I want democracy. And since democracy started, there's a fundamental voluntariness that is enshrined in this. And I am extremely glad to listen to you. But there's little that I can do. We subscribe to the same thing, the same period. We are guided by the same law. No difference. That I signed the Electoral Act. I have no choice. I don't want to throw the country into turmoil of argument of nothing. There is an overwhelming majority by the National Assembly that passed the law. If I have serious question or reservation about it, I will have raised it, but I have not. I have submitted myself to the principle of rule of law, democracy. I signed. The rest is history. We meet at the polls. The game is sweet. Only when you are winning. Oh, it's all right. We must accommodate one another. We must help one another. We must strengthen the platform. But democracy, is it? Yes. There must be peace, stability, and commitment to rule of law.
in spite of a new disposition towards reconciliation by members of the Tanimu Turaki-led People's Democratic Party, PDP. The faction loyal to Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has fixed its presidential primary for May 25, 2026. In a communique issued yesterday after the 106th meeting of the National Executive Committee in Abuja, the party also approved a new timetable for the 2027 general election. NEC approved the conduct of zonal congresses scheduled to take place in a fortnight as part of the party's orderly progression towards the National Convention, as well as the National Convention subcommittees. Meanwhile, Board of Trustees of People's Democratic Party, after a two-day meeting, rejected the Court of Appeal judgments that nullified the Ibadan National Convention. BOT said it would set up a reconciliation committee to interface with the National Caretaker Committee, a group loyal to Wike. Wabara added that BOT was conscious of the interests and aspirations of its members who were desirous of contesting various positions in the 2027 general election. Former Sokoto State Governor and Senator representing Sokoto South Senatorial District, Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, has formally resigned his membership of the People's Democratic Party and joined the African Democratic Congress, ADC. In a letter dated 11th March 2026, addressed to his ward chairman in Tambuwal, Shinfiri ward of Tambuwal local government area, Sokoto State, Senator Tambuwal communicated his decision to leave the PDP with immediate effect. The former Speaker of the House of Representatives explained that his decision followed deep reflection and extensive consultations with political associates and supporters. According to him, persistent internal crisis in the PDP leadership disagreements, and growing divisions within the party had made it increasingly difficult for him to remain a member. Senator Tambuwal expressed gratitude to the PDP for the opportunity it provided him to serve Nigeria in various capacities, including as Speaker of the House of Representatives and as Governor of Sokoto State during his second term in office. Here in Lagos State, the Lagos State government's Police Care Initiative continues its mission to bolster the health and welfare of law enforcement officers across the state. At the Zone 2 Command, Dr. Helena Atinuke volunteered her expertise to provide health screenings for officers, commending Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and SSA Hassan Adekoya. The program targets 10,000 Lagos drivers in partnership with the Nigeria Police Force and the NDLEA to improve road safety for all Nigerians.
The police officers are a pivotal organization and institution, and they look after the community, and the community has to also look after them, and we get the health in a good place, because if we don't do that, we're going to have burnout officers that cannot really protect the community. So them coming with this initiative to make sure that there's screening programs, there are avenues where we can teach them about their health and give them lifestyle changes is really good. I want to thank the governor of Lagos State, Governor Sanwo-Olu, for this wonderful initiative.
We have so many officers that are having one challenges or the other, especially when it comes to vision. And with this program, I'm sure many of our officers are going to be beneficiaries.
This type of initiative is a welcome development. For the past 7-8 years, I cannot see small character. But with this glass, actually, I can see very, very clear.
All right. Lagos State on that drive to ensure that our police officers are well looked after, especially their eyesight. And I believe that in terms of road construction, looking at sensitization on drugs and now eyesight, it's great work to see their efforts in the transport sector. But Rufai, politically, our news is dominated by political stories this morning. And as you would imagine, defections here and there, the status of the National Assembly and other stories. Your take this morning.
Okay. At first, for the eyesight story in Lagos, Ekoni Bajeti. But for President Tinubu this morning, I am not shocked with what President Tinubu is saying. You know why he's saying all of that? Because the game is in favor But him saying he's a dire Democrat is not acting democratic. Everything with the majority they have in the National Assembly, even before now, the fact that they could muscle their way through, they're passing laws to favor them, which is an aberration to democracy. For further reading, you can read about, books like The Prince, books like Baron de Montesquieu on separation of powers. And I'll give you instances. The Spirit of the Law.
That's the book.
Baron de Montesquieu. And I'll give you instances. In the 2022 electoral laws, Section 134 of the Electoral Act says, key grounds for election petition: non-qualification of candidates. This includes constitutional breaching Section 65, 106, 131. Forgery of educational certificates or false information in affidavits submitted to INEC. 2022 law. 2020, Dr. Abbas, why did you chuckle when I said forgery? I would have loved to know why you chuckled. Section 138 of Electoral Act 2026. It's just been narrowed to 2 grounds. Election being invalid due to corrupt practices or non-violence. The respondent not being duly elected by majority of the law and vote cast. In that, you narrowed it to 2 parts. Why did we pull out forgery of certificates? Why did we pull out other parts? Isn't the integrity of certificates of people that are supposed to lead us paramount?
Should be.
But guess what you now did? They now went ahead because they want to block people from moving to another political party, because the intention is to block other political parties. They now put in such a way that membership of another political, they just amended that one yesterday. Membership of 2 political parties will get you a 10 million fine, all right, and 2 years imprisonment. But guess the interesting thing, Ayo. The penalty for vote buying is 5 million. Political 2-party membership,
So
10 million.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they would rather vote buying happens in an election. Although they also put a section there that, okay, you'll be banned from electoral process for 10 years. But the penalty for vote buying is 5 million and 2 years. Having been in 2 political parties, 10 million. That was an added addendum. They just added that to it. It was not part of the first law they passed. That was what they talked about yesterday. So they've added that to it. We all know all of this is to stifle the opposition. As I say, President Tinubu is not being democratic. If somebody that served in his cabinet has been able to push PDP aside in such a way that even if PDP goes ahead to provide a candidate in presidential primary, he's going to be a weakened candidate. And at the same time, you've made laws in such a way that if the primaries does not favor the other people in the political parties, they can't move away. So you've boxed them in. And you are saying you are being triumphant, and you quickly sign the law in less than 24 hours. And guess what? You deliberately sidestep the concerns being raised, for instance, by IPAC, as regards making it one way to be able to have party primaries, as regards making it, okay, there's no delegate system, but there is direct primaries. You sidestep that concern, and you are saying, oh, the game is sweet when you're winning. And it's because you're in power, you can get away with all of this. And that's not the kind of democracy we want. President Tinubu has over 30 governors. Why are we locking up with the electoral laws? Why are we pulling out sections that are important? I will have thought that after the debates around the certificate issue in the last election, we should have left that there. But that was pulled out. You remember I was telling you the other day that there are many things that they've pulled out of this law that we don't even know about. It's beginning to become obvious. And when it suits them, they are so quick to go and add addendum to the laws, just like they did yesterday. So is this a democracy we are practicing? It's not. It's because it favors you and you can use the wheel of power. I know what a lot of people will say is, Rufai, if now you're not going to do the same, does it make it right? Because the same President Tinubu was taking that when I was in opposition, I ate my humble pie. But this was how we spoke and advocated when he was in opposition. I've said some of the things that they were done then was not right. So it will be on record we are saying these things for posterity's sake. And the whole world should hear it now. because these things will not augur well for democracy. Let's now watch and see. Okay, after they win elections and they make all the laws to favor them, are they not going to tinker it with it afterwards? Because you see, those that are making this law forget that at some point it will also affect them. Let's be guided by transparency and the truth. So it's easy for him to say all these things.
Okay,
I yield the floor.
Sweet only when one is winning.
Oh, yes.
Dr. Abati, your take on this?
Okay, it's sweet when one is winning. That's what every politician believes in. Politicians are into politics not to go and sell ice cream. They're into politics just to win. The problem we have in Nigeria is that people want to win at all costs. A wise man once told me that, look, in the electoral process, strategy is everything. How you adopt that strategy, just make sure you win and let the other party go to court. That's the principle behind this idea of go to court. But unfortunately, the experience that we have had in Nigeria is that there are issues of credibility and trust, either with the electoral process or, with the post-election litigations that we have had. Now, two things about what the president said about rule of law. He was having what they call iftar, the breaking of fast, with members of the All Progressives Congress and also members of the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, IPAC, it is called. So he was talking to a political audience. And two issues that he raised. One, he said he's a die-hard Democrat and that he believes in the rule of law. That's an important statement. Now, what those who disagree with him should be saying is that, yes, he cannot believe in anything else other than the rule of law. Because as president of Nigeria, he swore to defend the Constitution of Nigeria. And he must be seen in every particular material to be defending the integrity of that Constitution on which he swore to defend on oath. So there isn't much controversy about that. But in evaluating, his approach, then you can look at whether he's in fact defending the rule of law. He has also said he's a die-hard Democrat. You may also raise questions about that. How democratic is he? After all, we have been in this country where, the federal government of Nigeria routinely disobeyed, court rulings, either by the courts of Nigeria or the West African, court. The courts were just treated shabbily. So all this will form part of the review of the Tinubu administration. The second thing, he talked about governance, that he also believes in governance. That is also for Nigerians generally to assess, to look at, and to see whether under President Tinubu we had good governance. Opinion is divided in that regard. When you look at the economic reform, the government is generally supported by the international groups, rating agencies, the World Bank, the IMF, and all that. But it is for Nigerians, at the end of the day, to say whether during the reign of Olugbon or during the reign of Arisa, this was their particular experience. I'm trying to paraphrase a popular Yoruba saying. And then, of course, he talked about direct primaries within the Electoral Act. Well, every politician will talk about what he or she thinks favors him or her. And the president was saying, as a stakeholder in the process, that he thinks that direct primaries will work. Of course, the opposition parties do not, agree with that. They are, relying on what will be the delegate system, which they say is far more democratic. So opinion is divided on all of this. We cannot say categorically. But we can insist that we expect the president of Nigeria and all other players within that space to respect the rule of law. Otherwise, you have the rule of the jungle. And that is not what a responsible, properly run country should talk about. Now, about the APC dominating the National Assembly. Well, we have talked here about one-party state repeatedly, and whether Nigeria was descending into a one-party state scenario. But what we have now is not exactly the kind of situation we have in Burkina Faso, or that they have in, I think, Guinea, where Dumbuya has literally imposed a one-party state on the country. 40 political parties, scrapped in that particular country. But here in Nigeria, either by persuasion or by threat or by some special alchemy, political engineering, you have almost all the political parties dissolving into the APC, to a situation whereby now the ruling APC has strong legislative leverage. If you have 84 senators out of 109, okay, currently there are 106 there in that Senate, and you have is it 231 or 236 in the House of Reps. You already have 2/3 majority. What it means is that anything that the APC wants going forward, APC can do. Even if they want to change any part of the Constitution, they are well positioned to do so. So the literal interpretation of that will seem to be we now have a dominant political party, whether you want to call it a one-party state or whatever. The reality is what it is. The APC has already won even before the election, except something else happens ultimately. Take the Labour Party. Labour Party used to have about 8 members in parliament. They don't have anyone now. They have 0. NMPP used to have, I think, 5 or so. They have been reduced to 1. YPP has at the national level just 1 representative. ADC has 1, which is that party that Senator...
ADC has about 5 or 6.
5? Okay. Yeah. Which is that one that Senator Seriake Dixon joined? NDC. NDC has 1. So you say there isn't so much weight. And PDP is reduced to 14. So you find a parliament that, is on the side of President Tinubu. Maybe that's what that wise man I referred to meant by strategy. Okay. Now the PDP. The PDP had 2 different meetings yesterday. In fact, it will look like 3. It's a 3-pronged approach. You had the Wike faction, setting a timetable for primaries, for convention, and dissolving the National Working Committee. You had the Turaki faction also holding their own meeting and then saying, they reject the Court of Appeal ruling. They are defending the internal party affairs, internal democracy, and the courts in several cases. I cited them yesterday. I don't want to repeat myself. Should not inquire into the internal affairs of a political party. Okay. Then third, the national secretary of the party, Taufik Arapaja, Chief Alhaji Taufik Arapaja, now issued a statement dissolving the caucus, dissolving the BOT, dissolving the National Working Committee. The clear indication here is that the PDP is not yet out of the woods. They've been reduced to just 14 members in parliament. Senator Tambuwal, who used to even be a speaker of the House of Reps, he has now finally announced that he's leaving. So you ask yourself, who is left? 2 governors. Sheyi Makinde of Oyo State, Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State. Persons that we are being told may go one way or the other. Maybe one will go to ADC, another one will go to APC. Technically, as I've said repeatedly, the PDP has lost that presidential election. And Wike, in being very smart, who is leading the other faction, has achieved his objective, which is to make sure that it's President Tinubu that wins. At that presidential level, he has achieved his objective. But at the same time, the smart guy that he is, places the emphasis on smartness. He still wants a room inside the PDP. That's why he's talking about reconciliation. Now, if I can just imagine what will happen, he will hold on to that PDP so that he will have a window, a platform which he can use against Fubara in Rivers, so that if he does not want Fubara in Rivers for 2027, he will feed a candidate from PDP and support that candidate and provide a platform for those who are his supporters. Isn't that smart? And again, for 2031, if he goes to the APC and perchance is interested in the presidency of Nigeria,
he will know that it will be difficult in the APC for him to get the kind of space that he wants because of the entrenched forces in that political party. So he will hold on to the PDP, not for 2027. I guess his end game is 2031, when he will hold that party and then come out as a presidential candidate. All he needs to do is to look for somebody from the north to support him. And with his talent at political engineering, at strategizing, he will, even if he doesn't win, he will at least be on the ballot. So that's my own long-term view of it. Finally, as for Lagos State. Now, the program for drivers, for NDLA, for policemen, the story is not new. It's a stale story. They started February 9, 2026. To provide eyeglasses for policemen in Lagos so that they can see properly and not be looking for fire extinguisher that is inside the car. They did it also for drivers. All these drivers that don't see the road, particularly this small korokwe, I think they call them korokwe, who will be trying to destroy your car, thinking that they have a rich patron. So we have commended the program and the fact that it's being sustained. I think Honorable Adekoya is the name of the gentleman in charge of his special advisor on transportation or something. The fact that it's being sustained is also what we can commend. But the state government should continue to provide training, eye care, diabetes treatment, everything for these officials who harass the motorists on the streets of Lagos. So we welcome the commitment of the Sanwo-Olu administration in that direction.
Lagos leads, others follow. Say what you real, brother.
I gave you a chance
yes, you did.
to promote your state.
Yes, you did. But I mean, obviously, when governments are doing well, state governments or at any level, it's important to acknowledge the work that's being done. And I want to believe that Governor Sanwo-Olu is in legacy mode right now because he has just a few more months before the end of his second term in office. And this is time for him to begin to do work, or not to begin, or to continue work, build upon work, to ensure that Lagosians remember his legacy as governor of Lagos State. We can see road constructions across the state, infrastructure here and there. His people call him Mr. Infrastructure. So it's great to see that working. But again, there's still a lot more work to be done. And we are hopeful that in the last few months or the remainder of his time in office, he'll be able to consolidate on the work that's already been done, particularly as he'll be judged on his Themes Plus agenda on which he campaigned to the people of Lagos. Excuse me. Now let me go on to the main story for this morning, which is, of course, like I said earlier on, politically dominated. And I'll take the phrase that now is going to go viral, where the president has said it himself. He's always touted as one, but he said it again and reaffirmed his position as being a true Democrat and a man who respects rule of law. I mean, you can't take one away from the other. But let me say this morning that I don't think, based on data, information, and his antecedents, that the president can truly, in honesty, let's be honest here, call himself a Democrat. A master strategist, perhaps. And when you talk about master strategist, strategy can be in many ways, whether above board, through the corners, a way that people agree with or disagree with, but strategy nonetheless. And we can see the strategy that the president has play out in the way that the opposition has been decimated, whether by coercion or the coercion or the fact that they feel like, the reforms are working, as Senator Akpabio said, as a reason for this mass exodus of members from different parties, particularly the PDP to the APC. Whatever the reason is, was a strategy that seems to be working. However, posterity will tell to what extent that strategy should be emulated or praised. But let's talk about or probe that statement around a true Democrat. The process, even the process of him emerging as president in itself was contentious, to say the least. A number of people have come out to talk about how the process, whether it was INEC's fault or the body that was responsible for conducting the elections, wasn't exactly credible, free or fair, even though some people in his camp would say, that's the freest election that we have seen in Nigeria. But the process in itself was dogged and marred with a lot of controversies, also agreed to by observers internationally and locally. So even talking about that process in itself was not an exemplary performance of one whom you would refer to as a true Democrat. Beyond that is also the fact that when we talk about a true Democrat, it's one that values the process of democracy above personal victory or personal interest. And so you are more concerned about the institutions and concerned about the tenets of democracy, ensure that there's a free, level playing field for all players. But I don't think we can call any Nigerian so far, any politician at least so far, maybe the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, based on the fact that he was willing to accept defeat in the elections, in the second term elections. Maybe that's the only person you say that didn't go at all cost to win an election. That is whom you call a true Democrat. And then there are also actions that have been taken in the time of his in office. Number one is the issue in Rivers State. That's still debatable. Yes, some people might say that he had constitutional backing here and there, but how can under a true Democrat an elected governor be suspended? And we have a military, an administrator put in place. Until today, there's no record or accountability of service during his time in office. He said he gave accountability to the person who put him there, but that's not the person he's responsible to. It's the people of Rivers State first and foremost, and Nigerians at large. One of the hallmarks of a true Democrat is accountability and transparency, and we've seen in some instances where this hasn't played out. The current issue in Osun State with the local government and the withholding of allocations and funds. So on one hand, the president was instrumental in putting in place a law or legislation to ensure that more power is given to the local governments based on resources. On the other hand, he's stifling resources to a particular state because of political leanings. And so you can see that there are contradictions in this claim around being a Democrat. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because it's important that when we say things like this and we position in a manner, our actions speak loudly in such a way that the words cannot convince enough to the people who are listening. So at the end of the day, hopefully going forward, the president can be in his status a true Democrat. Number one, give the people a free, fair and credible election. Number two, let opposition thrive. Let there be a level playing field for all so that Nigerians can actually have an opportunity to vote who they want. And if it's the APC and the president, so be it. At least they'll come into office with the full legitimacy and the will of the people being at the center and the fore of things. And just as you've mentioned, if indeed it's because of the political sagacity, the fact that he's a master strategist, that all these governors are trooping to the APC, then that should also work out with Nigerians. So no need to put in or take out key elements of the Electoral Act when you know that you have done the homework to ensure that Nigerians are in your favor. If you have a level playing field, a true Democrat should not be afraid to go to an election allowing the process of democracy to be free, fair, transparent, accountable, so that the people can truly enjoy what is really a democracy. So on the African continent, we see a lot of definitions of what democracy looks like. But unfortunately, we are not there yet. And hopefully one day, Nigeria will get to that point where we will a number of people, at least the consensus will be that this is truly a democracy. Again, with regards to the other stories, Tambuwal was defecting, citing the fact that this PDP is a sinking ship and it looks like everybody is trying, like the Titanic, finding a way to escape and run away so that they're not caught up in the drowning of that ship. But I believe that we have a conversation in detail later on, as we have one of the spokespersons of the PDP joining us later in the course of today's show to take that further.